Hi everybody!
Hello.
Look who's here in the flesh. Colin once again he purposely requested.
I did. I initiated it.
He initiated it because he had so much fun last time when we were talking about Stranger Things Season 1.
Yes.
And we wanted to take advantage of the fact that Season 2 has just been released. And we both finished watching Season 2 in addition to Beyond Stranger Things, which I guess is sort of like a behind-the-scenes discussion table interview, round table discussion on the series. I guess similar to Talking Dead, if you've ever watched The Walking Dead's similar series, Talking Dead. So we're gonna hang out and we're gonna discuss and analyze our thoughts on Season 2. And something I need to show everybody is we're wearing our Hawkins Middle School shirts.
Yes, I got mine. I'm trying to fit it in. There it is. Hawkins Middle School.
AV Club.
Yes, AV Club. Shout out to AV Club. If anyone knows Onion AV Club.
Yes.
It's based on that. So yeah.
And also, wait, I need to get something really quick.
This is where I can tell all the viewers that Anjarts is really, he's just cruel and mean person in real life, and no, that's not true. He's as wonderful as he is on YouTube, I'm sure. So.
And the other thing that we have, hopefully you don't mind me snacking on my Eggo waffles here. So
subtlety.
Yes. So
That's funny.
So Colin, where do you want to start? What do you want to start
Well,
with?
I will start at the end.
Okay, we can start at the end.
Two reasons. One, like in the excellent Beyond Talking Dead show, and I enjoy post-show analysis in some cases more than the show itself, or as much as the show itself. And so I don't want to say the word connoisseur, but like I love to read things and watch things, and the Beyond Stranger Things is one of the best, if not the best, that I've seen, because it didn't take like an exorbitant amount of time, and it edited it well, and it got almost everyone except Winona Ryder to say it. And in that show, Beyond Stranger Things, they said spoilers, so I'm assuming you don't watch this if you've not seen all the episodes.
Spoiler alert!
Yeah.
Yes,
that's what they say.
We're going to talk about Season 2 if it hasn't been obvious.
Yes.
So big major spoiler alert. Although if you want to, you don't have to see necessarily Beyond Stranger Things before watching this, but you definitely should.
That's true.
You could if you wanted.
But we're going to reference it, and it'd be good. Yeah. And it's really not that long, because I was like, oh god, I'm not going to be able to do it in today, and I fit it in today.
Yeah.
But the bigger reason that I bring up start at the end is because I'm left at the end with in my opinion, near perfect ending scene, and whatever it was, a 10-minute extended sequence, the dance, that made me think initially, like, why are we going to continue? Like, you're ending so well. But now I want what's happening in Season 3, and why do we have to wait until 2019 until Season 3? So that's a good thing, though, if I'm, anticipating 2019 and...
They're not doing it? They're not doing it in 2018?
No, they are. Well, they're not. Almost definitely. They are, but if you remember previously, it took them more than a year to release, and now with Millie Bobby Brown and Finn Wolfhard being in movies and stuff, and it's starting later, like in Halloween, they're thinking it's going to be Halloween themed. I mean, in theory, Halloween is going to be the setting, presumably, of Season 3. Maybe I'm introducing new information to people. It's exciting. But Season 3 is presumably, according to them, going to be centered around like a holiday-themed one. And so that makes sense to, right after the holidays, or in the beginning of 2019, release that. So, yeah.
It makes sense to do Halloween after the holidays?
No. Holidays. No. So it's like Christmas. Like, so more of a different type holiday, Halloween and Christmas. I'm sorry, not Halloween, Christmas and like maybe Thanksgiving or whatever, but and then in anticipation have all ads during that, and maybe release it right after.
Oh, I don't know. They should probably try other holidays, because Season 1 was definitely a Christmas season, because it had all the Christmas lights.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Season 2 is very much obviously Halloween because it actually took place on Halloween. So I think season 3 they should just pick like something else like
I
Easter.
forgot about that.
or Easter or
Resurrection of the Dead.
Right.
I mean,
like have the little Easter eggs and then the Easter eggs break open and they're like little aliens, little darts, little darts coming out.
That's overdone because they already Easter egged the ban on Hopper's Hopper's thing that he let go of because he let go of his daughter.
So you did like how the show ended, how the season ended.
Yeah, yeah.
So you didn't want necessarily the cliffhanger like they had at the end of season 1. You didn't want any of that.
I mean, I think the end. It was so. I don't really care about how something is ended as long as it's executed in a satisfying way.
Okay.
And so the ending was so. Emotional and satisfying in terms of characters, and so to introduce some like dun dun dun, like big bad something that was too specific would have been weird. It's like in this Designated Survivor show, they'll have this like sort of touching patriotic moment, and then they'll cut to like this random like detective woman, and she'll be like, "Oh, the bad guy he's loose now."
Yeah,
and it's just jarring and off-putting. Whereas this. It really, I mean, it was great because it was sort of abstract and there's this giant force that's coming over us, but it connected and looked very much like the force that 11 was trying to take down. And this is, I don't want to take credit for this. This is in some like stuff that I've read after interviews, but like it fits the every step you take song.
Yes.
And the, although that's supposed to be like warm and fuzzy to a degree, it's also like stalkery and ominous, which fits the ending. And so.
I agree with you, actually. I did kind of prefer this season to end on a, I guess, happier note. I liked the fact that season 1 ended with a cliffhanger. But I also was hoping for an ending that tied up a lot of loose ends. Of course, obviously, the snowball letting Mike and 11 have their moment to kiss. Well, moment to dance at the ball. And then there was the kiss. And then, there was, of course, the stuff going on with Max and Lucas. I was really touched, as I'm sure you were, I was really touched with the... Dustin scene when he was being rejected and the poor guy ended up like he started crying and I got really misty-eyed because I feel like we've all been there. I think all of us to some degree has been
Literally.
Yeah, feeling that it's hard, especially in middle school when you don't really have anyone to dance to and when you try or high school, especially if you actually tried.
Or college. Keep going.
Especially if you actually tried. And then just got rejected in your face anyway, and you ended up being like a joke to these people, and so...
post-college? Sorry, this will end eventually, but it actually happened this week, but that's a separate...
What, this week?
Well, in a way, with the child journey, but keep going.
Okay, well, so I really liked the Nancy and Dustin thing.
No, you speak because I'm going to be effusive and I want you to let you speak.
No, I just thought that was a really cool, like, I guess brotherly sisterly moment, and I just thought it was a really touching. It was a really touching moment between the two of them, and one thing that I liked about the season 2 is I wanted to see more of the characters who don't normally get paired up to have some scenes together. So one example, of course, is we'll get to it, I'm sure, at some point. Is Dustin and Steve. Dustin and Steve came out of nowhere, but it worked really great, and I really liked, even though it was really short, I loved the Dustin and Nancy scene because they don't normally interact with each other, and they had this really nice moment. I know that in Beyond Stranger Things, Millie Bobby Brown gave a great point that she and Will's character, 11 and Will never really had a moment together. They never really interacted with each other. So I hope that they do that in season 3. But at the same time, I kind of want them to also explore, this season, again, we saw Nancy and Jonathan. I kind of want to see Nancy or Jonathan pairing up with other people. Again, we saw Joyce and Hopper. it would be nice to see Joyce paired up with someone else. Although she did kind of pair up with Mike a bit, so that is true. So there was a little bit of Joyce.
She was
and
with Bob for more than.
She was with Bob too, but Bob was new, so she was already. I'm talking about.
Okay.
I'm talking about characters that were paired up in season 1.
Yeah.
Like we saw the Joyce and Hopper thing, and again, of course, a lot of people are shipping Joyce and Hopper very hard. Mm-hmm. Although I do absolutely love Sean Astin as Bob. I loved him a lot.
Maybe Pirate Treasure.
I know that was definitely a nod.
Yeah, but it was perfect because it fit. Like it wasn't like glaring. Like that's just there for that reason. But it was. Yeah.
So back to the ending. I really liked it a lot. One thing I did want to ask you, because this was actually brought up over dinner last night when we had dinner last night with some friends, and
and I was like, I am not listening. I was literally going like this,
even though he already saw the season.
Everything.
Even though he saw the season already.
That's true. I didn't want to take away from the YouTube. We wanted it to be organic for the YouTube viewers. I'm always thinking of your viewers.
You wanted to go into this blind.
Correct.
Okay. So one thing that one of the friends mentioned was about the kiss. Was about the kiss with Lucas and also with Mike, and their argument was, although it is cute and a lot of the fans wanted it, do you think it's necessary for there to be some sort of romantic element amongst the 11, 12-year-olds? Because the argument was, can't you just let them be kids? Can't you just let them? Can't they just be friends? Because when Max came on board, yes, there was a lot going on with her character, but you could also argue that a major purpose for her character was to be this love interest, or it was a plot device for her to start this love triangle between Lucas and Dustin, as opposed to not needing that and having her just stand on her own as just a new girl, a new friend. Why can't they just be friends or good friends who just happens to be a girl? Especially since a lot of people that age, not all, but a lot of people that age aren't even really thinking about romantically that kind of stuff. And even the Duffy brothers said it themselves. Duffer, excuse me. The Duffer brothers. Yeah, see, this is what
That's the one thing I heard last night. I heard Duffy, and I was like, nope,
Duffy.
We'll comment on it.
I was thinking your dog, because your dog is
that's
Duffy.
Funny. Yeah.
His dog's named Duffy. But anyway, the Duffer brothers even mentioned that Max's character was a lot like the princess in that video game, like Princess whatever. She was supposed to be the princess. And I was like, well, why does she necessarily have to be the princess that's the love interest that's supposed to be rescued? I felt like that was a little bit too I don't know. I felt that was a little too, not sexist, but they clearly wanted her to be a love interest. And I guess the argument is that necessary?
Yeah, I mean, like, if this were season 1, I could see that argument more. And if it wasn't coupled with the reaction previously to the otherwise hyper enthusiastic reaction you had to Baby Driver, if it seemed Baby Driver.
I just saw Baby Driver last
which is
night.
Unbelievable. But the thing of a damsel in distress, and like, I mean, it might be a little like looking for gender stereotypes in so heavily that.
But I thought of that before I watched Baby Driver.
No. Well, but that doesn't mean that. Oh, fair enough. But I'm saying like it like the over, like looking at if something is a natural part of what happens, then if it happens to be a female pairing, then it's automatically we've seen that. Like, I mean, that's a part of. Anyway, to me, it wasn't in a forced way, and she wasn't a damsel or something like that. And
True.
the reason I mentioned season 1, season 2, is because, I mean, you could argue if she just went in and there was no introduction of any romantic element, it could be derivative. And she hilariously sort of references, it was kind of derivative, the story that you had, sort of a meta commentary seemingly on the prior season, or just a wink at that. But like, I mean, it seemed like a natural transition because they had already done the like, prepubescent, just in their own like boy cave, and this was not like, all about romantic relationships, but it felt like a natural thing. And I know I at that age, and it was very complicated for me for various reasons, but that's when I started thinking. I mean, 8th grade was when stuff started happening. Like, I couldn't access that. I probably might have thought, oh, you know what those girls want? A demodor. Yeah.
With pearly whites.
Yeah.
Oh.
So like, I don't know. I mean, no, but I will give you this, and if you're in that, then I think that like, I did actually at the end when everyone was paired up as the dance. As much as I think that is the best scene that they've had in any of in the series, but it did make me think, oh, is everything now going to be based on like, is everything going to have to be a romance? But I reject that because I don't think they're going to do that. Like, but it does make me a little bit want to, yearn for this. Oh, everything doesn't have to be about, romance, but I don't think it will be. I just, I thought it was natural, not sexist, but yeah.
And I agree with you that Max was not a damsel in distress. Like it was, I think it was made very clearly.
Negan damsel with that thing that she.
Yes, she definitely pulled a Negan. I think it was very clear from the beginning that she was a very independent individual who happened to be female, and I loved her a lot. I loved her to death. Everyone who's watching, as my viewers, knows that I have a soft spot for Ginger, so that that helped too to like her character. So she was super cool. I liked her a lot. Speaking of romances, though, especially this is also touched on at the ending. Let's talk about Steve. Let's talk about Steve Harrington.
Oh yeah. Well, okay. I would say to me, that was what made Steve, at a minimum, one of the 3 best parts of the season, because it wasn't. It did, I guess, maybe what you'd be looking for in the Max not being romantic thing, because it took, for me, what I thought, we're going to have... I didn't think it was going to be a love triangle as relentlessly as they did last season or stereotypically or whatever, but I was like, they're still going to be pairing back and forth. But the only really romantic thing was hilarious. The when they had almost the screwball comedy of Jonathan and Nancy together, and it was I don't know if you know, but that's directed by the Finding Nemo guy, Andrew Stanton. That whole series and part and sequence.
Okay.
And so anyway, but that was hilarious and original, or not. I mean, not original because it came from they literally playing Hello Dolly. Shout out to Wally, which he also directed. But anyway, but that part was different and not just a love triangle. But then the Steve thing, I was like, there was no romance, and they didn't even expect it. I think they said this in this series, but they didn't intend to have Steve as the babysitter.
Or alive, necessarily.
Or...
I think people were wondering
whether
or not Steve would have survived.
Yeah. But I mean, it was wonderful, and it took him from his anti-Breaking Bad arc, I guess, in the sense that he's this just jock bully jerk guy, but he's not ripped out now. He's a heart of gold. He's just sort of this guy's like the Germans. You mean Hitler? Oh yeah, him. He's still not brilliant, and that none of them listen to him, and it's hilarious. But it was wonderful.
Steve really stepped up to the plate this season, and his character, I think, definitely became a huge fan favorite, especially compared to what happened last season. I considered him to be the Daryl Dixon of Stranger Things, because I could not stand Daryl at all in Walking Dead the first couple of seasons. He started to grow on me in season 2, and then by season 3 or 4, me and hundreds of people adored him. So I feel like Steve Harrington is sort of in the same way, and it's just really cool just to see. Like you said, I'm glad that they didn't, they weren't beating a dead horse with the love triangle, because they easily could have. Because that was one of the things I was dreading going into the season, as I did not want them to dwell on the love triangle too much. And I was pleasantly surprised with how mature Steve handled and navigated through that situation, because I would not have expected that out of him, knowing the kind of character he was in the first season, and because he seemed like such a selfish individual, And by the end of season 2, he was incredibly selfless, and, you know, really found a purpose in taking care of the kids and Dustin especially. But, you know, just like the entire last episode, he just really came out on top. And I definitely am hoping, like many fans, that he gets some sort of happy ending. Not that necessarily a happy ending requires him to find somebody else besides Nancy, but I think that it wouldn't hurt. There are some theories, and you can tell me if you think this is completely like ridiculous of a theory, but it's becoming a popular theory. And I promise you, this theory I did not think of this theory myself because it sounds like it's such a big gay agenda. But some people have this theory that the reason why Billy, you know, the other the bully, or the Red Ranger, Zachary Montgomery was the Red Ranger. Billy, people thought one of the reasons why he was so antagonistic to Steven is because Billy may actually find Steve attractive. Like, because a lot of people were also talking about what they considered to be a relatively homoerotic scene in the shower when they were having a shower together, and he was getting like really close. I personally didn't see that myself, but I don't know. Do you think that's totally ridiculous? And
I mean, mostly, the one thing that I think could lend credence to that is the dad. If you remember, he called him. He did. Yeah, he did. He did that, and he's all looking at himself in the mirror and everything, and trying to put on that stuff.
Yeah, so, he spends a lot of time getting himself ready. So I mean, there's that stereotype.
Yeah, no, and that honestly, that would make sense. I mean, and I'm continually surprised how even really successful writers and directors don't plan things out.
Yeah.
But it goes back to the thing I probably mentioned at the last Stranger Things. This thing that has been the huge influence on my life since a year ago, since I saw La La Land, that you have to try to plan something within an inch, everything within an inch of its life, but be willing to let it all go if something great comes along. And I know that's what the Breaking Bad creative Vince Gilligan, they did all the time.
Yeah.
They would have these people supposed to be killed, but that as it came organically, and so I mean, Aaron Sorkin, West Wing, like that is a consistent thing. So I don't know if they intended that, and I do doubt it. But
I doubt it too, personally.
Yeah, I do. The other reason, now that I think about it more, the reason I was gonna say it could be plausible because it could be especially tragic if they went down that arc, because he's never going to be able to have a happy ending because that era won't allow it. It would just be anachronistic and it would ring completely hollow. That said, that could make it harrowing and I know it sounds like I'm going back and forth, but it is a really interesting idea because if he is the best that Zachary Montgomery or oh my god, the character's name, Billy, the best that he could hope for is a tragic yet somewhat redeeming, or at least not redeeming because he's been described by them as like a sociopath and like whatever, but at least have something that is a thing. So if he died tragically because of that, but I don't know. I think it's a stretch, and I don't think it's what they're going for. But it's got more legs than some theories that I had heard. So,
or it could also always just get with Mrs. Wheeler, with Mike's mom.
That was brought up, and they had that scene because it was a totally different side, and that was a great scene. But once she learns he's a sociopath, I don't know. There's possibilities, but that was fantastic. And then he gets in the car and immediately is a freaking jerk immediately. So that was good. That was great.
So you brought this up, and I'm sure you are probably very interested in talking about it. The Nancy and Jonathan scene with Murray. It
was wonderful. Like, Murray, who I had idiotically forgotten was the guy in the beginning when Hopper's like,
yeah, I forgot that too.
Did you hear? He's like, yeah, I heard about that guy who's, that old man who like goes down the chimney and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We better watch out for him.
Yeah,
but I forgot. I'd forgotten. But even without that, and usually it takes whiles for characters to establish. But from the opening, he was hilarious and not in a like manner, or even if he could have been considered mannered. Like, the actor entirely pulled it off. By the time they get to the vodka thing and the, like, the inappropriate pull-out top double entendre, which was hilarious, though. And he literally, like, spit-taking his, whatever Jonathan was drinking. But both of them, before that, Jonathan's reaction was my reaction. Like, and the vodka and the way Nancy and he went back and forth on when they recognized the thing together, and when the cops flip him off at the end, when he's drinking his beer like on a victory ticker tape parade. It was he was a great addition.
I would love to see Murray in the next season. He's a great character.
I know you had a conversation that had been, a very in-depth conversation about something.
Yes. Several, actually.
Oh,
so
several.
I'm wondering which one you're talking about.
Well, I'm talking about the one that was at work and was, interruptions and stuff. So I'm wondering if one of the biggest contentious conversation was about the lost sister, I'm assuming.
So that is, I think, the most controversial episode. Yes. Because some people that I talked to, about half, seems to be relatively split evenly. Some people really enjoyed that episode, and the other half really didn't like it for many, many reasons. One side says that they felt that the episode was out of place, especially since it took place out of Hawkins. It was a little disorienting because it was just totally different from the other show, from the rest of the show. They felt that some people went as far as saying it was a useless episode, or it broke the flow because of the episode, how the episode prior ended. They just said it just broke the momentum, and a lot of people felt that it was unnecessary. Other people felt that they liked it because it was different, because it expanded the universe farther out, and because people they definitely thought that it was that the whole thing with 8 was really interesting. She had a really awesome looking ability. It was a very creative ability, and I personally thought that the episode was important to the overall story, because that is how 11 learned how to harness and focus her powers to make her more powerful, so that she could close the gate at the very end. So I feel like if it weren't for her sister training her, she probably would not have had the strength to close the gate at the end. So I think that it did have a purpose. And I think that the majority felt that while 8 was interesting and was a cool character, they didn't really care for the other gang members. They were like, I could have done without them. They weren't all that. They didn't do it for them. So I think that was what both sides are saying.
I think that's an accurate reflection. So my experience was bizarre because I saw the episode, and as you can tell by my I don't want to know even about the commentary after the fact. I try to avoid stuff so I'm not biased. And after the fact, or in the midst of it, and then right after it, I was blown away and absolutely loved it.
Okay.
For most of the reasons that you said in the new camp, or in the second camp you mentioned, because I'd been liking it. The season had been strong, but especially with the sci-fi elements, which I think I talked about last season, but I am relationship and cinematography, and the least thing that I usually care about is the inner workings of whatever orbital or the science aspect of that doesn't really matter to me. So it was getting to this happens, then that happens, and you couldn't really have an emotional impact. And not that I really thought about this, but it didn't really resonate, because let's check in with them, let's check in with them, let's check in with them. And even I think it was the episode right before them, I think was The Spy, which I'm pretty sure had the Dustin Steve first amazingness with the Farrah Fawcett hair and all the like wonderful stuff, but that couldn't really register nearly as much because it was one of many were checking. And when all of a sudden they dove into like an entirely different world. I mean, we got a little, glimmer in the first scene, but like entirely different world, and with new characters, which I definitely get, and I'll come back to why I can understand and why I came back down and recognized there were a bunch of problems with the episode, but like. At least I kind of liked that they were jerks. I liked that they were not in a sense of one-dimensional, but like that they were grittier and like not as it was a totally different world.
Yeah.
And it just kept getting deeper and darker, and it gave what was I really liked the back and forth between Hopper and 11, but like
Hopper and 11.
Yeah, earlier. Earlier. I like that, but as a contrast, this wasn't, two reasonable people with, positions which, you're going to see in the end they'll make up and they'll have the Danny Tanner moment. It's done in a better way, but still. Whereas this was people who were like horrible or potentially horrible, but it could have been in the way that any, bad person or any good person who can get sucked in when they're disillusioned and of no one else to a terrible cause. Although the convenience store scene, even though I was liking it, struck me as a little like, okay, they're clearly going to be unredeemable if they're stealing things from this convenience store man. But the part when 11 has to decide whether she's going to kill the guy or not, I thought that was great. I mean, it was terrifying, and maybe I've just seen too many anti-hero dramas, but like I thought it was plausible that she could kill him. Oh yeah, and that would go down a whole other darker road, and it wouldn't be unmerited. You can't just kill people, but like it would be believable. And but the fact that they didn't do it, I sort of saw that they were pulling back, and the line. And in other contexts might have been like obvious, but because for me it really worked. The line at the end where it was, they're not going to save you, and it's just like, no, I'm going to save them.
Yeah.
I mean, it really worked for me. And then the last, and I'm going to forget it, and I can't believe I have a very good memory usually, but I tried to look up like song titles and quotes before we got here, and it's called The Bird. By I can't believe I'm forgetting, but you can put in the comments or something. This last song over the closing credits after she's on the bus, it was perfect. If you look at it lyrically and the sound and the it was wonderful. And I listened to it literally like 7 times on a loop before I finished the thing because I wanted to stay in the moment for it. And then I emerged finally from this wondrous spell to find out that it's the worst episode ever and it's awful. So like that was a really weird experience, and I do. So
you felt that way?
No. I emerged. Like I went on the internet and I found out that I was entirely wrong, and it was the worst episode ever. And like, okay, so
I think there were a lot of people who liked it though, but there are a lot of vocal people who didn't.
Yes, but there were. Okay, so my final in the final whatever, putting together everything, I do definitely get that parts of the execution could have been better, and like they could have been better, and like it okay, at a minimum, it wasn't worth the jarring them out of that sequence. Like to do it right at the lab when they were right at the end of the previous episode, and then to throw it into at a real cliffhanger, and then to throw something completely different. It was too much for not that much of a payoff that they could have done at a different point. I don't think that was structured incredibly well, and I don't know. I am not incredibly knowledgeable about 80s punk culture, and so but lots of people that were like really it was incredibly obvious and just like if you had some just incredibly like someone that didn't actually know about it tried to be like, oh, this is what the 80s were like.
And this is what punks are like.
This is what punks are like.
And gang members are like.
And gang members are like, Yeah. So I get that. But I just, I can see that that's better. The one thing that I do I reject that lots of people have said is the idea that, they're like flat or stereotypical or whatever. Like, or okay, I can see if you're saying you're just like having like the actual choices of costuming and what they did was not good, because that's something that you can just do immediately. But the idea that they're going to be these fully formed characters, like
in one episode,
in one episode, like the Stranger Things kids, the beginnings were just little characters, like they're not. I just think that was unfair. And when you get, Dustin's mom doesn't have like almost any characterization, but that's fine. Like that's not to be expected. And I thought that part was too harsh. And so it could have been better. Yeah. But it really worked for me.
When I first saw the introduction to the season, because when you first see this group, and that's how the show started out, I thought that this season they were actually going to expand the universe more and start branching out and not necessarily completely moving the focus away from Hawkins, but at least starting to expand more throughout the season and not just one episode. So I was a little surprised that we hadn't seen that group until near the very end. And I haven't really decided if I think I know what the answer is, but like I'm debating on whether or not I necessarily want the focus to expand outside of Hawkins for this series, or just keep it in that town only and not worry about branching out. Because there is a part of me who definitely thinks that it's better for the show to just stay focused in that isolated bubble that is Hawkins. But there's also the other part of me that is curious about numbers 1 through 7 and number 10, or number 9 and 10. I am curious because I think when I first saw season 1, I think I assumed that all of the children had the same powers. All of them were like telepathic and telekinetic. But it looks like each of the kids might have their own separate ability. And if that's the case, I'm kind of curious what happened to the other kids, what their abilities were like, what are they like? Do they have the same, are in the same situation as 8, or are they more in the same situation as 11? But on top of that, I don't know if I necessarily want this show to turn into the X-Men, because you know what I'm saying about that?
And I hesitate to mention this because I know you liked part of the show, and I did initially. I did too. One episode was amazing. But they just a lot of the descriptions of the Lost Sister was like Heroes. Like the second,
it was a lot like Heroes. Yes. But I don't know if I necessarily want it to be like that.
Yeah. But okay, here's my answer to that question. I don't care as long as
it's done well.
Yeah, as long as it's done well. Okay. Because I think that's a very good question, and it's a possible thing. And I think that I do think they're going to learn from it, because most creators, although they have their own vision, like Justice for Barb. If people didn't care about Barb, there's no way they would incorporate that. That was well done fan service. But so they are clearly listening and reacting. And so, but they've also said in that little here, if you don't know, it's news, in my reading of the 3rd season stuff, I was thrilled when I read that they were doing, I forgot the exact phrasing, but more intense, they didn't use this exact phrase, but episode-long character arcs, or close studies, or bottle episodes, or whatever you want to say. Yeah. Which definitely goes along with the Lost Sister, but I think I know they literally commented on the reaction to it, and so they're gonna take and because of that, I think they're gonna put every damn thing they have into making sure if they do a Divergence, which they'll recognize. Some people like Divergence. It wasn't that great of a book, no. But some people like that, and that's an exciting avenue to them. Not just be locked into the same thing, but they will make sure that when they do that again, this won't be this will be the best that they have, I think.
So what do you prefer? Because I know Walking Dead does this back and forth too.
Yes.
Sometimes in The Walking Dead, they have different groups, and throughout the episode, they jump around. They jump around different groups. And then other times, they just take one group and they only focus on that one group for an entire episode, which is another reason why I think that episode was so different from all the others because all the other 8 episodes was jumping around between these characters. So what do you prefer?
Okay, before I answer that, this is a kind of viewer question. As you're not able to tell, I love movies and music, but with shows, I get very much connected with them, and I try to devour as many as I can. And so, if I don't know a reference, like when I'm reading about shows and I don't understand a reference, or like I don't know, I've never seen Alien. I'm a terrible Stranger Things viewer, but I've never seen that. But I can still, like, when they reference it, I'm like, ooh, and I listen to things that they say about that. So if I'm referencing shows that people haven't seen, I wonder if that immediately takes them out, or they would make a mental note of that, like that particular thing. Oh, that sounds intriguing. And then maybe that might intrigue them to see more, making a connection to it. And then someone that has seen that show, and I've had this experience, if someone like makes a connection or references something that I have seen, especially if it's not, as well seen, that has an immediate excitement and an immediate immediate connection. So I'm curious, any of the shows that I'm referencing, one that I'm about to say, is that something that viewers are open to, like, having many, in addition to making the main point, having little allusions to something that they haven't seen? Or is that still worth it? Because if you get something that you haven't seen, or that you have seen and you're passionate about, that, out of left field allusion might be exciting for you. So that was just a general thing. If any of the other shows have been referenced, if you've seen that, and by doing that, is that an automatic, like, irritant because you haven't necessarily seen the things, or is it, and something that is actually enhances your, enjoyment of these reactions? So that is a big thing that I wanted to bring up, but it's in reference to, what was the question you had just asked? Because I was just about to.
Do you prefer, what type of storytelling?
Oh yeah, okay. So the show, The Leftovers. The show, The Leftovers, which I didn't realize until I put it up.
The Leftovers, which I haven't seen.
Yeah,
but go ahead.
Put it up online. Had a huge cult following, and it is very much in the mode of go out of left field and follow someone intensely for an entire episode. Okay. But it really addressed exactly your question, because it went from, check-in to giant arc, and back and forth, and all the different combinations. And this, I guess, speaks to the reason I brought up that question, is because I think that very tension of how you want to have it all check-ins or all arcs is fascinating, which has made the show both polarizing, but people are incredibly passionate about it. So to go to my refrain, I would say I don't care, but if you want me to directly answer the question, I would say I prefer intense episodes on one person to check-ins, but I like a balance, and I think it's important to have a balance.
I like a balance too, but I prefer the check-ins.
Interesting.
Because I like the pacing of, checking in on multiple characters. Maybe it's because I'm the kind of person who doesn't have to wait for a series to be over and then binge. So normally I'm watching a lot of shows like The Walking Dead live, and I have to wait a week for the next episode. So if I'm watching an episode, I'm only focused on this one group, and then I have to wait another episode to find out what's happening with everybody else, as opposed to, here's little things that are happening to all these groups. I kind of prefer it that way. And for me, it's more energetic. There's more energy. And I like the little breaks in between, because it's like, something happens here, let's take a break. Okay, now something happens here, let's take a break. So for me, in general, I don't know if I would want every episode of a series.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
So like in Stranger Things, I could have been happier if, let's say, 80% or 75% of the season had episodes that jumped around, and then the other 25% were more focused. Yeah. I think that would have been great. So even with season 2 in Stranger Things, even though I do prefer the check-ins, I think I would have preferred slightly less check-ins and have had slightly more focused episodes like the sister episode.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Especially if it's more Steve and Dustin.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Okay, cool. So we also talked a little bit, we sort of glazed over Bob a little bit. Because I also want to talk about Bob. What were your thoughts on Sean Astin addition to this?
I mean, it couldn't... I don't think they could have done anything better because it was... He started out like, you know, who's this guy and like whatever, and he then the moment when he comes over to their house, and he's all clueless, but then he's like, oh, well, there's puzzles there. I could like do those puzzles, and then but then after like his whole hero thing, and he actually asked them. I mean, do you think you saw this? But he asked them to like, he's like, I gotta be a hero, right? I'm going to end a hero, right?
Or at least die.
Both. And then he's like, but I really want to die. And, you know, but it was another thing that I haven't seen mentioned anywhere is that it really is important to have accountability and stakes in a show. And if no one died the entire season, it would have, you know, made all the like scary situations not be as much stakes behind them, but it wasn't like but like sometimes like Walking Dead is like who's going to be killed this time. Like it felt natural, and I think it was important as a larger like stream for the series.
People are predicting that one of the main kids might die next season. Do you think that that's a good idea?
I actually thought
good idea.
I actually thought about that. I mean. Yeah, I mean, again, if they do it right...
And it better not be Will. The poor guy. Of all the kids, that kid has had enough.
Well, but
please
that's
make
the
Will
thing.
be safe and
I
fine.
agree
not be
with
Will.
that.
Of all the kids...
At first, I was going to say, but the reason, not because I wanted him to suffer anymore, but almost for the opposite reason, I was going to say, if he's going to go, it could be like a shocker thing, but like... No. But you know what? I take that back. I take that back. I can't.
If Will dies, we riot.
But you're doing it for a totally different reason. I'm not doing it because like, oh, poor Will. I'm doing it because I don't want like I didn't want him to suffer, so someone has to go. It'd be a quick thing. But no, because I think an interesting thing, frankly, would be Will becoming like badass. I'm not saying that, but like him being in a totally different, unexpected Steve season 2 like direction. And so, but I do think that, I mean, I don't need the kids to die. Just like I don't need anything as long as it's executed. But like, I think that would really add stakes. That would have season, you know, serious with book 3.
I just hope that they give Will something better, give him a chance to actually grow as a character instead of just, you know, the kid who needs to be saved again. Because he's had to be saved the first 2 seasons, and I would love for him to grow a little bit more as a character. I love him as a character, don't get me wrong, I love him, but right now we don't know enough about him as compared to, you know, Dustin and Mike and Lucas, because he's either, you know, unconscious or trapped in upside down or being the mind flayer slave, you know. So it's like he's been on the screen a lot more in season 2, but not really completely himself. And you know, I'm sure the possession and the visions, the dreams, has been affecting his psyche a little bit. So I kind of want to see what Will's like when he's not, you know, a nutcase. For a change.
I mean, no, I 100% agree that, you know, they're not going to do poor Will, scared Will again. But that said, I think it's really impressive what they were able to do, which you would think, okay, Will is in peril again, but it was totally different. And for me, way better. I'm not saying the other one was bad, but it's like, okay, this child is used as a plot device. I mean, his acting, like the part when he said, I swear I looked up quotes so I could be so specific on the thing, but I think even I can handle this quote, remembering when he said, like, he likes it cold. Yeah. Like, and between that and the whole like scene where they were going in a circle when they were in like the cabin.
Yeah.
And
I love that scene.
But he had different ways of freaking out. Like he had like the tearful, but like the screaming to the "I will murder you because I'm the mind flayer." Yeah. But then when he's looking when they're going around in a circle and they're telling these affecting stories, and he's just like, like his face was like almost literally glowing. Like you could see someone trying to come out of there. Like, they're telling these things that I connect to that, but I can't. And it was like Wallum or Giggle. I mean, to
Yes.
I mean, it was so. I just thought for something that you wouldn't think worked because they did it before. They did it. They did it differently and well.
My favorite scene was definitely the scene where they tied him up to a chair and shone the light into his face, and the mom was trying to tell him about. Do you remember? I remember when I don't remember if it was when you were first born. It was like, I've got you crayons. It was the crayon story.
Yeah.
And then Mike was talking about how they first met, even though he said that Will was his oldest friend, although I think in season 1 somebody mentioned that Lucas was actually his oldest friend or something along those lines, but I don't know. And then, Jonathan talking about retconning. Jonathan talking about their dad when they left. So it was I love that. It was a beautiful, beautiful, intimate scene. And of course it was heartbreaking when Will just said, let me go. But then, we had the whole really neat,
burning him with the fire?
No, not burning. The Morse code. Morse code stuff.
Oh, that was cool.
Right after.
A small moment I loved is when
you got burned.
No. That was a giant moment. That was. I honestly had trouble looking at it. It was very uncomfortable. But I loved that Winona Ryder was more like, you gotta kill him.
Yeah, I like that she didn't hold back.
Yeah, and then the hot poker with Nancy was great too. But I want to focus on to mention the part where. Do you know me? Do you know me?
Yeah.
And then she's like, yeah, you're
mom.
Which I still don't know, and maybe it's supposed to be ambiguous if that was supposed to be the guy. It was him that it could barely come out, or like this imposter is like, well, you're this female and you're trying to care for me, and my brain, my computer brain tells me you must be mom.
Yeah.
But either way, it was great.
Yeah. I have to say both. So Joyce, I have to give mad props to, because I'm sure it wasn't easy for her to step back. It would have been easier for her to step back and stop, heeding Will after he was crying in pain, because I don't think any parent wants to hear their kid in pain. But if it's for their only good, I mean, she did the reverse. She turned it up, and it was Jonathan who was actually like, "Mom, you're gonna kill her. You're gonna kill him," and she was like, "No, I gotta get her." Yeah. So mad props to her. Also mad props to, from a parenting point of view, mad props to Hopper during the whole blow up the argument between him and Eleven, knowing very well, and Colin and I, we discussed this before, knowing very well that Eleven could easily kill Hopper just by going like this. Yeah. The fact that they were having this argument, he was, she blew up he destroyed the TV, and she was just going really, really, she was really angry. But he didn't back down. He didn't, he was trying to maintain his parental authority, and just because he knew that physically he could have just died just like that, he still stuck to his guns. Now, granted, I don't necessarily think that he's completely innocent in that situation, because I think he definitely made a few wrong calls and handled the situation poorly. Then again, I can't completely say that Eleven was totally innocent either.
And that's the point. It was a great scene.
So they were both, I think you said, they both had valid. Their feelings were very valid. I could see where both of them came from, and you really enjoyed that scene, like you said.
Yeah, but I was when I went back. Yeah, the last episode was definitely to me the best episode of the series, and the last scene was
when they had closure.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I don't necessarily need closure, but it was just it felt like, okay, the Hopper 11 scene was great, but that was a lot of the other episodes in the beginning. Understandably, they were trying to build it, so just sort of didn't really, but everything really seemed to come together, and I guess presumably the last reference or other show thing, but I'd be I'd be curious if people know this, which I think more than almost any of the others they may, and more than any other show, this would be a really interesting comparison, and I'm surprised if people did reference it. But Freaks and Geeks, which you haven't seen yet, and we'll see eventually. I'm assuming we'll see, or maybe with children, but is wonderful, and I mean, I think better. But it has a dance scene which is it's just as good. I'll just say it's just as good, and it hits on something that is equally moving, and it's an 80s middle school or high school, dance scene, but it's incredibly moving. And just to go back to my if some reference that you explain it and it makes sense, but knowing that, I literally squeed when I read an article that it said, total echoes of Eli and Lindsay at the end of the Freaks and Geeks pilot. And I was like, yes, good. But not in a way that it was like annoying, like, they just did that over. I mean, it felt like they were both mutually recognizing this terrible / wonderful moment in many people's lives.
Yes.
And capturing a way that allows them to go back to that.
So, overall, did you like season 1 better or season 2 better?
Season 2. I mean,
okay.
For a while I thought it was going to be season 1 because the episode where they have the bathtub is wonderful, and the episode where you think they fall off the cliff was great. But the season 1 finale wasn't nearly as good to me.
Okay.
Yeah. So at first I didn't think I was going to say that, but for me it's definitely season 2.
So why? Well,
because almost it had all of the things that season 1 had in it, but it had almost no. It had almost no negatives you could make things better or something, but it didn't have some of the glaring negatives that season 1 had, like Winona Ryder screaming every 2 seconds, "Why don't you believe me about my son?" Like, and it I mean, she cares, but like, you can care a little less repetitively.
You like making fun of that.
It wasn't just bigger. It wasn't bigger and it wasn't bigger. It was better. It took the old things, and I worried that, what are they going to do? That was the thing. What are they going to do? Because I think, what monsters? But I don't care about the stupid monsters. The monsters are ways to get into their psyche, and so I think the fact that they didn't introduce like scary alien number 12, but they just had this ominous force hovering over them, gave them such freedom to explore, kids and coming of age things in both homage ways and original, twist ways. Leaves me hopeful for the future.
I did love them both, but I definitely enjoyed the first one more. And the reason why I enjoyed the first one more was because season 2 they did a lot of improvements, and I love the new characters. I love, the new storyline. There were, I guess part of it was, there's 2 major things. So one was, my favorite part of season 1 was definitely the chemistry between the kids. And I was pleasantly surprised in season 2 when 11 kind of showed up on the first episode. I didn't expect for her to be like back, at least for a few episodes in. I expected for them to take the time for her to return back to Hawkins or whatever. I thought she was going to be in the Upside Down for a little bit. But no, she was already there and apparently had been with Hawkins for a year. So I didn't expect that. And since 11 was there from episode 1, I was very anxious of having her and Mike finally reunite. And episode after episode after episode, I was waiting and waiting and waiting. And they didn't actually meet until the very last few seconds of the 8th episode, the second to last episode. And so it was cool once you got to episode 9, all of the kids were together, the gang was together, but I kind of wanted more of that throughout the season and not just at the end, because that was my favorite part. And I'm not just talking about 11 and Mike, all of the kids were separated from each other for a good chunk of season 1, because, Dustin was off doing his thing, Lucas was off doing his thing, Mike was being emo Mike, Will was again, out of his mind. So I didn't get as many scenes with the 5 kids plus Mad Max. I wanted to see more with the kids together, and I didn't get that. So that was something I really missed from season 1. The other thing I didn't like about season 2 is that so many of the characters that I absolutely loved and adored in season 1 had moments that just really frustrated me. So, one example, Mike, who I saw as, in season 1, the really compassionate, the nice guy and very empathetic person in the group, I was really frustrated with the way that he was treating Mad Max. Because he was like, no, you can't join our group, and he was just being out. It's one thing to not have her, join them because, for Lucas, for example, he wanted to keep Mad Max safe. But I think it was beyond that. I think he was just being really emo to the point that he was just downright nasty to Mad Max for no decently good reason. So it felt really out of character. And I understand he was going through issues, like the cast was saying he was being emo Mike, but it frustrated me. Another frustration that I had was Dustin, who I absolutely love. The whole thing with him and Dart, like keeping Dart a secret from everybody and just being really shady with Dart and manipulating his mom a little bit when his cat was eaten. Dustin really frustrated me and disappointed me a lot in some of those episodes, and he seemed really out of character for him to not know what presumptuous meant. I was like, Dustin's really smart. Why does he not know what presumptuous meant?
I'm shocked that I don't remember that part.
Yeah.
What was that part that they said?
Mad Max. He was trying to pick up Mad Max, and Mad Max was like, "Oh, you're being a bit presumptuous, aren't you?" And then she leaves, and he turns to Lucas, and Dustin's like, "Is presumptuous a bad thing or a good thing? Wait, is presumptuous a bad thing or a good thing?" And I'm like, that's a lot of character. But I mean, that's just a joking aside, because so that's another frustration. I was really frustrated with 11, who I also love, with how she, in my opinion, overreacted when she saw Mad Max and Mike just talking. They weren't even really close. They weren't even this close. She was had enough bubble space. She was just talking to Mike, and she just seemed, I can understand that she's not used to dealing with people. So she has social things going on, so she doesn't understand, social cues maybe because of how she was brought up. But that's another reason why I don't think she would have necessarily thought, her mind would have gone, oh, there's something romantic going between those two. It seemed a little off. It's either she is socially awkward or she's not socially awkward. If she doesn't recognize social cues, then why did she recognize that there might have been some supposed sexual tension between the two? If she isn't, if she is in tune with that kind of stuff, with social cues, then she probably would not have seen Mad Max necessarily as a threat just because they happen to be talking to each other. So that seemed really contradictory, no matter whether or not you think that 11 is or is not socially in tune with what's going on. Either way, it's contradictory. So the way that she treated Mad Max, not only with knocking her off of her skateboard, but later on, when they first meet and Mad Max is trying to shake hands with her, jealousy is one thing. It just seemed a little forced to me. It seemed too much, and I don't know, it seemed a little contrived, in my opinion. So yeah, I think it was those parts that took away from the season for me, because it didn't feel like these were the characters I loved during those moments. By the end, we were fine, but I think that the difference is in season 1, I was consistently loving the characters, and I consistently wanted to see them in scenes more. But in season 1, when things like that happened, it made me not as interested in watching them in that moment, at least, because I was like, really?
Okay. I had a few things I would say. One, although I'd forgotten it, I 100% agree about the presumptuous thing. That doesn't make sense. That's not Dustin. That's a very good point. I think another thing could be, you sometimes, if someone isn't doing something that's likable, that is interpreted as a a negative as storytelling versus a negative as negative in storytelling versus just the characters doing something negative. And now I would understand, because you did say that it seemed forced, but that's just as a one point. But the other point, more specifically, and maybe this gives like other something that you hadn't like considered or whatever. But I mean, when people are when someone is in love, and not just in love, but like went 353 days with thinking nothing about someone, but thinking about nothing practically but them, and became a obsessive in a way that is whatever is, and to go back to 11, which is an interesting thing about the social thing. I hadn't actually thought about that,
right?
But and then that could it'll be a little bit of it, but I don't think that's even the bigger thing of it. I think, if anything, because she's not as developed, it makes it a primal impulse, not something where when you have, like, there's a known thing, like when your first love and you think, I'm never going to love anyone again. This is it. Like, as a thing. So I'm just saying,
that's
like,
fair.
So I didn't think that, like, if only love or lust, if you want to say, or obsessive puppy love or whatever, if that's not rational, that's, adolescents wouldn't be good for Match.com. Like, they wouldn't look through a listing and pair things. They have deep, passionate things that they, get obsessed with. But this is just even more compounded by the tragedy and the lack of any other outlet. So I just think for both of them, I think, for both of them, to me, there were plausible reasons, both as humans are at that age and because of the circumstances.
No, I understand. No, it's fair, and I understand that these are, most of the people I was talking about are teenagers. Mm-hmm. So of course, they get moody, especially when tragic things happen to them.
But it's not like Harry Potter. Like, I'm not like Harry Potter in the Order
No, I didn't think it was like Harry Potter.
Yeah,
no,
I'm just saying. Yeah.
No, it's not like Harry Potter in the fifth book, because I know a lot of people talk about that. But I don't think it really is rooted too much on the likability aspect. I just think it was more of, it just felt inconsistent in some ways.
Well, that's what but it transitions to the last one, which I don't see how the Dustin thing was, but that's where I go more to the likability, because the other thing I guess I could see, because at a minimum, in terms of logically, like, well, Levin shouldn't be like that, and Max is not trying to be a direct threat, so why would they do that? But with the Dustin thing, like, I mean, he's always sort of mischievous and whatever, and he would, he has a big scheme, thinking, I'm going to put my hair together and I'm going to do this and I'm going to go around.
He does,
and so he has lots of those things that are not particularly, logical or won't work socially, but he gets passionate about them. So the idea of a Demogorgon, like, and what I will say, if you want to be critical, I think there's part of, but they should have revealed it. I wish they had revealed it to Mr. What's his name, and then that would have created him to be in the story more. So everyone, I would criticize that.
I just could argue that I felt that Dustin, and I definitely could be wrong, I felt that Dustin would have handled that situation a bit differently. Okay. Like, I understand that part of him was like, I discovered this creature, and I don't think it's even because he wants, like, the money for it or anything, but just the recognition and just to feel like it's something that he succeeded in, something important that he succeeded in. But I think that there also would have been a part of him that would have felt a little bit smarter about it. Like, knowing what it is, it's not a lizard, it's not a whatever, and knowing what's been happening in Hawkins. The fact that he seemed completely oblivious. Completely oblivious at how dangerous this thing could be. I'm not saying he needed to necessarily just kill it outright, but he just never seemed to consider that this thing might be dangerous, regardless of whether or not it's a completely new species that he's discovered. So that was that really frustrated me, is that I would have felt he would have been smart enough to at least entertain that idea, entertain that theory. But who knows?
No, you've like, and in some way it seems like I slightly convinced you about the Mike and 11, and they're coming from the primal popular. But no, I slightly misinterpreted it, what you were saying, or were just convinced by you. I thought initially it was more about like, oh, he was not being. That was not a good thing. That was not a nice thing to do, and he was being inappropriate.
No,
but it's just because he knows, he's so knowledgeable, mind flayer.
Yeah.
And so I like it. Good job.
Was there anything else that you wanted to talk about with?
No. I would say there's, and maybe you can put in the description or something, or. There's so many quotes that I just said I haven't been able to remember, but I deeply enjoyed going through and looking through the link. And so, although not, Aaron Sorkin or even Josh Schwartz in OC, like it wasn't incredibly brilliant poetry, but it was quotable as anything and hilarious in times. So I'll try to add a link to something so the viewers can, recap that in a shorter time than an hour. So, yeah.
So who is your favorite character in season 2?
You go. So
for me, it's Steve. For me, it's Steve.
Yeah.
Yes, you too.
Yeah. Okay. I mean,
and I don't think it's just because I think he's pretty. I think
no.
I actually don't think Steve is that pretty. I actually think Billy. If he cut his Zachary Montgomery, I think is prettier. If you get rid of the mullet, but
physically the more the Billy, but I think Steve is more visually. But
Steve.
Anyway, no, I didn't think it was good. Objectively, I can recognize Steve is clearly the most improved and the best.
Yeah.
From an emotional perspective, okay, if you, I know because you're so frustrated, but like, and he was 100% my favorite in season 1. Dustin was.
Okay.
But and I do think that is a fair point about it not being like if he was all knowledgeable about these type of things, that would be more rational. But otherwise, I just think Dustin was fantastic because I do think putting aside that it may have been not a smart knowing his knowledge of that, but just in terms of like his both charm and the way he went through the thing with Steve, but then took command once he got to that point. And he was sharing with the group, and the way Copper's like, oh, it's just a bunch of things for kids. He's like, it's a manual.
Yeah.
And the last scene he won, I mean, Mike and 11 was great coming back together.
Yeah.
And when she's like, I don't know how to dance.
Yeah, I know.
Neither do I, and go back together. But that was more stereotypical great.
Yeah.
And then the fact that he got all excited with the hair and bonding with Steve.
Yeah.
And then the song was, I think it's Twist of Fate. Anyways, but that was perfect. But then he went in and he played multiple times, and this is a little tidbit for the, I think it's from the Beyond Stranger Things, but like his look when he's dejected after he's rejected, and because you don't need to sift through the entire. I mean, you should, but like when they said that it made this crew member who had a mohawk cry, and like, I hadn't even really thought of that, and initially I was like, oh, I want him more to be like Gang Ho in season 1, but. Yeah, he still was my heart favorite. Although I recognize Steve was the best written and evolved character on the show.
So, what are your hopes for season 3, or predictions? Your hopes or predictions for season 3?
That it be terrible, so we don't have to have such a long thing. No, I'm half kidding, but we had a huge running length, but it could have. Like, I had to restrain myself because it was just got so many cool things in it. Stick the landing on self-contained episodes so the peanut gallery doesn't riot and discourage exciting episodes and detours like that. Focus even less on scary monster things unless it's done in a funny, interesting way, and really just maintain the same funny, moving character arcs, and have the new Steves develop. I really think they can do that. I really think if they took Will and did creative stuff with Will and flipped him or in an interesting way, I just think new dynamics and sophomore slump is a real thing in shows, and it didn't happen, and I only think it would get better from here, I think. So I've mentioned this before, but I want Will to come to his own in season 3, as I said. I want #Jopper to finally take a page out of Murray's book and just get together already. I definitely want to see a happier ending for Steve. I would like to see more of the kids, like Mad Max and them, interacting more together as a group. I would like to see more of the usual pairings getting mixed up, as I've said before. Jumble up, like the Steve and Dustin thing was great, so I want them to shake things up a little bit more. I'd like to try to delve more and see if there's any way that we can find even more sympathy for Billy's character. We had a little bit of that with his dad, so it'd be nice to get a little bit more of that if they're going to do anything with Billy's character. I think those are the main things. Oh, and I definitely want to try to at least start getting more information on the other kids with abilities. Kids numbers 1 through 7 and 9 and 10, and of course 8. I'm sure they're going to bring 8 back to some capacity. It'd be interesting to have her back in and see what's going on with that. So those are like the major things that I'm hoping for in season 3. There will be Back to Future references. It's 1985.
So. Oh, it's 1985.
Maybe Springsteen, Madonna, way before Nirvana.
I remember 1985. That's good. So, thank you guys so much for joining myself and my husband Colin with Stranger Things 2. Please let us know in the comments what your thoughts are. Do you agree or disagree with anything that we just said? Do you have any other insight on anything that we said? There's only so many topics we can discuss, so these are just like the major ones that we pulled out. And let us know what your hopes and predictions are for season 3.
Oh,
and
sorry. Mike's mom they need to expand Mike's mom.
Yes.
Expand Mike's mom.
We need to see more of Mike's mom, maybe even with Billy. We'll see.
Or even Mike's dad, because he's a comedy gold.
Mike's dad and Billy.
No.
Oh, wow. Mike's dad and Billy. That'd be interesting, too.
Oh, my God. No. He's... Well, yeah, no, that was actually a serious thing I was going to say. Not about Billy, Mike's dad. But that... I don't think they should expand it much. I mean... Because one of the few things that I would say wasn't an issue is there was too many people, and like Mike, who was I just made him because my real name is Mike, but like I really related with him and liked him, but there was almost no time for Mike. Yeah. Even Lucas's dad had a great that one scene with the parents was
and the sister too.
Yeah, the sister. I mean Jolly Dumbabosa. So like it was. But so I don't think they need a lot of extras, and maybe that's part of people's frustration with the introducing all the random stock punks. Why do we need this? But so I think they don't really need to expand very much unless they have an incredible idea. Yeah. They need to take their existing things and spin them wondrously.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time.
Love yourselves and love each other.